As we think about brain development in our young children, it's amazing to watch the skills develop between the ages of 3 and 5, especially for kids who have parents and environments that intentionally focus on the development of their children's skills. Just a little bit of background in early brain development before talking about what happens in children's brains between the years of 3 and 5. The brain develops from the bottom to the top and from the back to the front. The most sophisticated part of the brain is in the front, top part of the brain and is called the prefrontal cortex. We'll talk more about that soon. The structure of the brain is fully developed at birth, meaning that the brain is fully formed. But the wiring of the brain happens through a child's interactions with others in the environment. And when I say wiring, it's just like the wiring in your house. You've got to get the wires from point A to point B and connect them to get a light to turn on. In a house, we physically take the wires there, and in kids, we create the wiring based on the types of interactions we have with them. In the past 15 to 20 years, the brain science has become clear. The more high quality, responsive, and nurturing interactions a child has, the more effective the brain becomes. A little bit more background. The brain increases from around 2.5 pounds at age 3, so the size of a butternut squash, to around 3 pounds or 90% of its adult weight at age 5. That's probably about the size of a large coconut. But kids' brains are obviously not 90% developed by then, far from it. There's so much happening on the inside of the brain that continues to develop throughout early adolescence and adulthood. From birth through early childhood is the time when the brain is growing the fastest on the inside and the outside. Babies are born with about 100 billion nerve cells in their brains, and they add more throughout their lives. In the first few years of life, the brain is developing an astronomical number of synapses that connect nerve cells in the brain with each other. 1 million new connections per second. At birth, babies have about 2,500 synapses or connections between neurons or nerve cells. And by age 3, it's around 15,000 synapses per neuron. That's like going from 100 to 600 friends on Facebook, with each of those friends being connected to 600 more people. It's crazy to think how complex that is. In the early years, young kids are just forming connections all over the place in their brains. This is the best time for these connections to be made. So kids' brains are making as many as they can. And what happens over time is that the connections that are used repeatedly, like a well-worn hiking path, are kept. By age 4 or 5, the brain is getting rid of connections that aren't used, and it will continue doing that throughout adolescence and early adulthood. The connections that aren't used much, like a hiking trail that's never walked on, will disappear. All of this happens based on a child's experiences. So experience plays a crucial role in wiring a young child's brain. And every child's brain is wired just a little bit differently. Some of that comes back to their personalities or their temperament and how they interpret their experiences. There are some areas of the brain that are essentially wired by age 3, like visual areas. They've formed the hiking path and gotten rid of connections that aren't needed already. But our connections in the most sophisticated part of our brains continue to develop and will begin to be refined in the school-age years, building on all the earlier brain development that's happened. So what important areas of the brain are being wired between the ages of 3 and 5? The cerebral cortex, like the peel of an orange, is the outside peel of our brain, and it's using more energy for growing synapses and myelinating, or basically insulating the connections with the fatty sheet so that they get lightning fast between the ages of 4 and 5, using more energy than it ever will again. From now and into the school age years, the prefrontal area of the brain, that very front and top part of the brain, is really active, helping our 3 to 5-year-olds begin to have better working memories, helping them to stop themselves from doing something they shouldn't do. And this prefrontal area also helps them to plan to do something rather than just impulsively do it. During this time between 3 to 5, the two sides of children's brains are beginning to lateralize or specialize more as well. The left hemisphere of the brain, which controls the right side for motor skills in the body and also sensory stimulation, so those senses on the right side of our body, as well as language, logical thought, reasoning, writing, and math skills. So that left hemisphere side is especially active between the ages of 3 and 6, and then it slows down. We see this in how kids' language skills develop so fast during these years. The right hemisphere of the brain, which controls the left side motor skills and, also the senses, like the sense of touch on the left side, as well as creativity, spatial skills, imagination, emotional intelligence. This right hemisphere becomes more active over childhood and into adolescence. And throughout early childhood and adolescence, the connections between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex are developing that fatty sheath or myelinating to help preschoolers and early school age kids to have maybe a little bit better emotion regulation. All this is just mind-blowing to think there's so much happening in a young child's brain and how important we are as caregivers. Then we look at the hippocampus, which is responsible for learning and memory. It's active in the second half of the first year of life, and then it gets really active again during the preschool and elementary school years, and makes connections with the cerebral cortex, the outer part of our brain, and the prefrontal cortex. As a result, we see kids having better memory as these connections are being formed. And finally, the corpus callosum, which links the left and the right hemispheres of the brain, is most active between the ages of 3 and 6, which helps the kids to begin to have more smooth movements on both sides of the body, so better motor movements. And then it also helps kids to think better. They begin to have better perception skills, better attention, memory, language, and problem solving. All of this work in the brain continues through the adolescent years, and typically by around the end of adolescence, all these different complex systems that haven't been connected before are well integrated with each other. And we see just the very beginning little tint of that during the preschool age years, and it's just going to keep building on everything. All the interactions that your child has right now will continue to build and build and build to develop a great brain, and the foundation that we're building in these early years is critical to kids' success in adulthood.